Welcome back. I'm Dr. Hawkins, and today we're going to talk about the family. The family now. Let me tell you a story to kind of get you in the mood of talking about family. The story is about a little girl who goes and asks her daddy about, where she came from. And her dad goes into the story about Adam and Eve and creation and God making her and, Adam's rib and the whole thing. That afternoon, the little girl comes back to Dad and she says, Dad, I asked Mom about this and she said we come from, evolved from apes. And the dad said, honey, all I can tell you is she was telling you about her side of the family. Family. So just the thought of this, what family means and the difficulties of family. Families really are groups of people. They don't even have to be blood related. But you call a group a family if they have a common goal. And generally our families today have the common goal is, raising kids and emotional, material support of the group. And within that group, there is an order, always an order. We call it sometimes pecking order. So it's an order of the hierarchy of power, of roles, of rituals, of customs. And different people have different roles. There is the physical power structure, which involves, who's making the money, who's going to put their foot down, who's in charge, who's not, who interferes with the structure, in the family. You think about yours. Then there's the emotional. So if the family's in a crisis, there's someone, sometimes different than the physical leader, comes in to supply that part. That's their role. A lot of you have been pulled in as children into that role in terms of emotionally trying to take care of our family. When you pull someone out of that family, if you changed them and put them back in, it's going to change the whole family. Now, if you can see up here, it's kind of like the back end of a clock, All of those gears that's moving around. Now, you change one of those gears, pull one of those gears out, and you put a new gear in, just a little bit different. It changes the structure of the whole thing. If you really kind of bent that gear in some way and stuck it in here, it would. The change of the whole family changes. It works different. Now, the changes within a family, the changes those cogs, is kind of like remarriages. So when you go to a Thanksgiving meal, your old sister-in-law or brother-in-law is not there. There's someone new. Or a new baby is now. Or someone is not there anymore because of death. Grandma's not there. Or some member of the family's not there. How a family comes together and deals with that is really important. There's always an upheaval of emotions, anger, depression, guilt, when there's a change in that. There's always resistance to change. But then families adjust and incorporate all the new or the vacancies, and everybody takes their place again, and the whole system works. If they refuse to do that, or they can't do that, the system is going to be limited. It's going to be more vulnerable. Well, if you got a drawer in your house that you absolutely never can get in, or a room you can never go to, or if there's a subject you could never talk about, you're limited. So Anytime that there is a part of your family that cannot be incorporated into the system, you're going to be limited, and in that way, you're going to be more vulnerable to future things. Pain management can be one of those things that makes it difficult to adjust. It is difficult to adjust the changes in a member as they're put back with a disability. One of the things that families talk about a lot or ask questions about is, how do I get my family to understand my illness? How do I get my family to understand that I'm in pain? And the stories I hear is, they don't believe I'm really injured. Or they believe I'm taking too many drugs. They think if I just, knuckle down and go back to work, that things will be fine. And I get that a lot. And my answer is, how do you do it? You don't. You can't, you have no control. The only control any of us have is from our nose in. Anything out here, we have no control over. So how Aunt Minnie and Uncle Fudd think about your condition, or whether you're on drugs, or whether you should go back to work, or whether you're faking it, you have no control over. Now, let's back up a little bit here. Let's think about the family you came from. Chances are most of you have a real strong work ethic. And so did your family. That's where you got it. And you're having difficulty getting clear about whether the medication you're on is what you should be on, and whether you should go back to work, or whether you're faking it, or whether you're taking a little too easy, whether you should push yourself. And so if you're having trouble with it, you came from this same family, they're going to have trouble with it. So you're not going to change that. What's going to change it is when you have settled and when you have successfully managed your pain, so that you're pacing. It doesn't matter if you're taking a box full of drugs. If you're functioning and you're not working one day and laid up 3. If when you come to a family gathering, when you're there, are you a disabled person? Or are you a person with a disability? Do you have a life other than pain? Are they going to see something else other than you hurting? Or are they going to see you managing yourself? Yeah, you're going to have pain. And yeah, you're not going to be able to do everything, go out in the backyard and throw the balls and, do all the things. Get under the shade tree and do this, or get in there and work for 4 hours with the family cooking. You're not going to be able to do any of that. Well, you're going to be able to do it, but it's going to be on a limited basis. You're going to have to sit down and get up and sit down and get up. But when they see you doing that, and you're not apologizing, this is just your life, and you're taking part in a realistic way that fits your physical abilities with your physical limits. And when they see you doing that, they're going to settle. They're going to see it's working. Now, another thing that I get a lot of questions about is, if once you get injured or you have come down with a pain condition, people get concerned about being a deadbeat dad. I hear, I can't be a mother or a wife. Parental roles. They don't feel like they can be a parent. They can't go out in the backyard and throw the balls. They can't, pick up the grandbabies. And again, when we're first injured and we first have a diagnosed with a pain condition, it's a crisis. And so we're going to be obsessed with all the things we can't do rather than the things that we can do. But when you boil it down to there's many more things that you can do than you can't. The research is real clear. Disabled men and disabled women. The research shows they raise kids that have the same sexual identification, emotional strength, success, self-esteem as those who are not disabled. The research is that people who become disabled and their income goes into the pits, and those people who are disabled who, for whatever reason, there's no change in their lifestyle, income, their kids turn out the same. So disability is nothing that affects the children. You know, when you look at what really you do for kids, you know, you're setting limits when they need to have them because they can't provide them for themselves, and they need this safety, and they need to learn. You impart values, you love them, and you touch them. Then what is it that what other things can we do? Well, we can affirm them. Affirmation is one of the major things that parents do. And it doesn't matter how old we are, we're still looking for affirmation. And you know, there is nobody in the world who can affirm a child or an adult better than their parent. If it comes from a parent, it matters more. You know, if you think about one of the most important persons in your life, think about it for right now. What was it, a grandma or maybe a teacher? What made him so important? When you think about it, you know, you're not thinking about grandma out in the backyard throwing balls at you. You're thinking about her. You were special. And she liked something about you, and that's what you remember. And that's what your children is going to remember. No arms or legs are needed in being a parent. Now, one thing that you do need as a family member is to let your family know how they can help and how what they do, how it's going to help the family. You know, there's some things that you can't do now. And it may be things like, you know, you can't load the dishwasher. You can't do the dryer. You can't maybe mow the lawn. And somebody's going to have to move into that position to supply those needs for the family. And so delegating those out to the kids is going to be important, and for you to let them know how this is going to help the overall family. Now, some adolescents might need, if there is a dip in the income, adolescents might need to get a part-time job to be able to buy some of the extra stuff that they need. That is not going to warp their personalities. You know, giving a job to family members and letting them know how that's going to help the overall family and to help you is going to help them reduce the amount of frustration, but also the helplessness. Kids and family members want to help. And with you giving them a job, you're helping them deal with that. They know that they're doing something that will help. The other important thing about giving them a job is that you want to be sure that they know what their responsibility is, so they know what their responsibility isn't. And that's the other thing. You need to be sure that you tell the family that your health, your happiness, and whether or not you are pulling yourself out of this is your responsibility, not theirs. Now, think about this. A lot of you didn't get that message, and that's when you stepped in to take on these roles that made you a doer. So delegating work is what leaders do. And when they don't really know what to do, they bring in a consultant. So if your family is continuing to struggle 6 months after you've been injured or diagnosed with a condition, you may want to think about bringing in a consultant, a professional in family work that'll help your family pull this thing together. You know, another reason that you may want to seek consultation with a professional would be if the turmoil within you continues. If for whatever reason something has stopped you. Now, I work with pain people all the time, and they all come in thinking they're nuts, and they're not. So your struggles with the pain doesn't make you crazy. I mean, you feel crazy, but you're not crazy. It's having to deal with this thing that you never expected in your life, and your training has never prepared you to deal with. So if you're wrestling in the dark with this thing that you can't get together, you might want to think about seeing someone, because there is an issue about emotional contagion. You know, as we talked about before, our emotions, strong emotion, is healthy. That's normal. So depression with a loss or a hurt, anger with a loss or a hurt makes sense. But long term, those things begin to be ineffective. In fact, they begin to be destructive. So if you continue to feel this, number one, your pain's going to go up, because the research is real clear. If you're in the dumps depression, if you're in the if you're fired and biting everything in sight, your pain's going to be a lot worse. Your pain tolerance is going to be worse. What the research also shows is that having a disability does not automatically push you into being emotional. Emotions come from here. It is remember the ABC? It is the difference between the event and the feeling. In between there comes the thought. So working on those thoughts. And if you're having trouble with that, then you may want to see a professional to help you. If it continues, it becomes toxic. The research clear on that. If you've got what it was the story about a bad apple in a barrel? It's true. Not that apple is wanting other people to have difficulty, but that turmoil, everybody cares. You're an integral part of the working of this family, and so if there's problems going on with you, it's going to affect everybody. So your responsibility to family members who are now maybe mowing the lawn when they didn't before because you did, or maybe putting the clothes or doing a little more cooking, or taking care of the kids a little bit more. And maybe they're out working all day and they come home and they take on these extra activities. I have never found a family member that resented doing it. Do they want to? Who wants to take on more responsibility? But this is the package they get. This is what happens. They're going to take over these things. But the resentment comes when they do all of this and they come home and all they see is a hammer beat a family member, that they're beat down. Why am I doing this? They're thinking. That would be rather normal, wouldn't you think? So your responsibility to someone who the family that are picking up some of the pieces to help you out is to work on yourself. And this program will teach you to do that, how to deal with those feelings, how to successfully manage your pain. Another issue that people bring in is, and it's rather common, is changes in a marital relationship because of pain. That comes for a lot of reasons. You know, the person may be tired, medication, a pain. You know, people are not sure whether they should approach and make certain demands or requests, whether to hug you, maybe, because they don't know whether that's going to hurt you. You may be concerned about approaching, hugging, or trying to initiate some form of intimacy because you're not sure whether that's going to be successful or not. You're going to think maybe that, I'm not as appealing as I used to be. Who would want me? All these negative thoughts again, see? You need to talk about those feelings with your spouse. It is the hardest thing to do, to get people to talk about their feelings and intimacy. It is hard to do that. A little hint is when you start to do that, you're going to feel possibly that you feel as if you're a little kid. You know, snibbling, snotty little kid who's asking for maybe too much. And when you think, if I say this to them, you know, they're going, if they ever even thought I was a decent person, they're going to see me as this little whiny baby that, you know, who wants to be, you know, what kind of man or woman would be coming across like that, you know? But what's going on? There's nothing childish about it. But we feel like we're acting childish, see? Where that comes from is those are old childhood feelings. That's why people don't like to talk about them. They've been with us since we were little kids. And so when we come up with them to discuss them, that old feeling comes in, so we feel childlike, but the information that is needed to be discussed is not childish. And in spite of how you think, how you're perceiving it, your spouse, your loved one is not going to see it as childish. So talk to them frankly about what you're needing and what you're concerned about. Initially, you know, families have difficulty in expressing anger or differences of opinion. Family members might be concerned that it will just be adding insult to injury or make matters worse with you if you're the pain patient. Or you may be feeling, I can't bring this up, I can't put my foot down. I mean, after all I put this family through. These are things to be dealt with. And we talked about that in the section of roadblocks. And so I encourage you to put those thoughts into the SMART chart. Don't let those stay on your plate because they're not real. Most families dysfunctional families do not use assertiveness communication. Most of the communication they have is demands and withdrawal. Or they get defensive. Or they get stubborn and refuse to listen to certain things, refuse to listen to the other side. Or they, as I said, they get defensive, and when you're defensive, you know, you do not hear anything. You're just listening enough to know where to put your next punch in. Those are not good communication skills. In Roadblocks chapter, we talked about how to assert yourself. And so when you're talking about what you're needing in the relationship, use that technique. It's not, you know, you don't touch me anymore. It is, when you touch me, I feel loved. It's a different story. Same thing, same theme, same message, different way of doing it. And you're not going to trigger their defensiveness. when you are trying to pull the intimacy back together, it may be good to start out with the emotional intimacy before you do the physical. So, again, after you two have talked about this, then be a little playful, be considerate, court in a sense. Give and take compliments. And then when you do get looking at and dealing with the physical intimacy, it's really the journey that you want to look at, not the destination. Now, we guys love the destination, let me tell you, but we just slow down. It's not, you want to get there. I used to work with a psychiatrist in a psychiatric unit that I worked at for a number of years. And he was an older man at that time, and I was fairly young. He would say, I understand that now. He understood it then. But we'd get a guy 55 years and older coming in with a nervous breakdown, and he'd always say, the man's impotent. He wasn't always right, but it was quite often he was in the ballpark. We guys go crazy at that point. What I'm encouraging you to do is something that no one has ever talked about, no one tells you about in your life. Any kind of change in a family, any kind of change in your life, you get injured, you're sick, whatever big change is going to affect how you're going to perform sexually. So take it slow. This has been this way forever. People just don't talk about it. So if there's a message for you guys out there, just know that what you're experiencing is normal. It's okay. And a huge majority of the time, if you take it easy and don't push it, and don't worry yourself, take it easy, it all comes back together. Just remember that when families are put under stress because one member has had some difficulty, they pull together. Now, they don't always understand, and so there's misunderstanding, but the job for you is to deal with those issues and with the skills and the techniques that we're teaching here, and help your family come back together. Because in spite of what has happened, you can enjoy life again. This is Dr. Hawkins, and I'll see you next time.